This is the first in a series of three videos about how to write a sentence. Make sure you check out the complex sentence video and the compound complex sentence video as well. But basically, what these videos are going to do is they're going to talk about how to add variety to your essay, how to make your essay more easy to understand, and how to keep your reader engaged while they are reading your essay. So, before we can start talking about the different kinds of sentences that we want you to write, let's talk about the two basic clauses in the English language. The first kind of clause is what's known as a dependent clause. This is a group of words that does not form a sentence. I want you to think of these kind of clauses as children. They're not quite ready to perform on their own. They're not able to pay bills. They're not able to cook their own food. They're not able to have jobs. They need somebody else in order to help them survive. So that's kind of how dependent clauses work. The second kind of clause that we're going to be talking about in these videos are independent clauses. These are groups of words that do form a sentence. Think of these kind of clauses as adults. I don't need help paying my bills. I have a job. I'm able to take care of myself and function on my own. Now, help is important and help is nice sometimes, but I don't necessarily need it in order to survive. That's kind of how an independent clause works. So now that we understand how clauses work, let's take a look at the first of the four kinds of sentences that you could write in an essay. This is the simple kind of sentence. It's one independent clause. Think about these as single adults. Nothing wrong with being single. It's actually kind of fun. You don't have to answer to anybody or anyone for what you're doing. You get to do what you want when you want. Okay. And in your writing, there are some advantages to being a simple sentence. Number one, it's the best way to show emotion. Think about when you're angry. Do you go off on long, big sentences? Chances are you don't. Chances are you keep it very short. I'm upset with you. I need you to take some action here. All of these are great ways to show that I'm upset with you without using a lot of words to do that. Simple sentences come in very handy here. Simple sentences are also the best way to make sure you're easily understood. Every sentence on the screen that you're looking at right now is a simple sentence. It's the best way to make sure somebody understands the content that you're trying to explain to them. And then finally, simple sentences are almost impossible to get wrong. As long as you remember to capitalize the first letter in the sentence, spell all the words correctly, and put a period at the end of it, chances are you're not going to have anything grammatically wrong with your sentence. So there's a lot of pros to writing a simple sentence. What the other three sentences are ways to make simple sentences better. Now, I don't want you to hear that you need to stop writing simple sentences because that's not what I said. Simple sentences are extremely effective in the three situations that we just talked about. But if you're dealing with a different kind of situation, you may want to switch to one of these other three kinds of sentences. So let's take a look at the first of the remaining three kinds of sentences that you can write. These are called compound sentences. This is when you take two independent clauses and correctly join them together to form one sentence. For instance, you see here that I have two simple sentences. I love teaching face-to-face classes. This semester I'm teaching online courses. Right now they're simple sentences. I want to find a way to put them together and make them one sentence. So, in order to help you understand this, I want you to think about compound sentences as married people. In this example up above, I have two simple or two single adults, and now I want to put them together, and I'm going to do that by helping them get married. So, exactly how do I pull this wedding off? The first way is to use a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And you see an example of the seven coordinating conjunctions in the English language there on your screen. Basically, what you do here is you take out the period that separated these two single sentences, you replace that period with a comma and a coordinating conjunction, and now these two simple sentences can be one. But remember, all weddings have to have two rings. What happens here a lot is sometimes students drop in just a comma. That's a comma splice. Sometimes students just drop in the coordinating conjunction. That's a few sentence as well. So what we want to make sure that you do here is that you bring both rings to the wedding. The comma's for the guy because we get the little one. The coordinating conjunction is for the ladies because they get the bigger ring. Another way you can get these people married is by using a semicolon because sometimes we're on a budget. When my wife and I got married, we were dirt poor. We did not have two rings. We had one ring. And so there is a way to get people married with only having one ring, and that is to use the semicolon here. And you can see that I've basically done the same thing I've taken the period out that separated these two sentences into two, but this time all I've done is I've put in a semicolon, and that's going to be perfectly acceptable. Now, that said, you do have to be careful when using semicolons. You can't just go into your paper and start taking periods out and dropping semicolons in. There are some very specific rules that you need to follow when it comes to semicolon use. The first rule is you have to ask yourself, do I have two sentences? If the answer to this question is yes, you can use a semicolon. If the answer to this question is no, you cannot use a semicolon. So up above, I could use a semicolon because I had two sentences. But if you were to say something like, I like cake, ice cream too, you cannot use a semicolon here because ice cream too is not a sentence. And so once you determine that you do not have two sentences, semicolons off the table. If you determine that I do have two sentences, you have to proceed to rule number two. Rule number two says, ask yourself, are those two sentences talking about the same thing? If the answer to this question is yes, it's okay to use a semicolon. If the answer to this question is no, you cannot use a semicolon. So you see in our example here below, we cannot use a semicolon. Cake and Ford cars are two drastically different things. They have very little, if anything, in common. And because of that, we cannot join these two things together. So make sure you're following both of these rules. They both have to be answered yes. If you can't answer yes to either one of them, do not use a semicolon. Try using the comma coordinating conjunction, or realize that you may not have two sentences and you can't join these two things together. So that's it for this video. If you need further help with this issue, feel free to email me on the email address you see there at the screen, or stop by my office in C288 during the office hours listed in your syllabus. If I'm unavailable or my office hours don't necessarily fit your schedule, check out our wonderful tutors in L200. And if you're a distance learner and you don't like coming up to campus, check out the website you see there on your screen put on by Purdue University.